Good evening. Thank you all for joining us. I'm truly excited to welcome this carefully selected panel of experts, each known for their excellency in crafting powerful personal brands. This event opens our upcoming program on the 18th of February, EDGE, Executive Development for Global Effectiveness, which will explore, among other topics, personal identity, branding, and how to position yourself as a senior leader. Please note that the webinar is recorded and will be shared on Tech Women for Boards social media. We would really appreciate if you can keep your cameras on so that we have a better engagement. I will pass it to lovely Rúna, our moderator for this evening, who will be introducing briefly herself and other panel speakers. Thank you. Please do also put your questions as we go along into the chat box, and we will be reading it either during or at the end of the webinar. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Rúna Magnúsdóttir. I'm a leadership advisor and mentor based and living here in Iceland, which is the country that has sometimes been, over the last few days, has been conflicted with another country called Greenland. But and I am the creator of Baby AI. It's an AI leadership reflector designed to help leaders to turn self-awareness into clarity, confidence, and impact. And I am super excited today to be with such an expert that are going to be talking about how we're going to be exploring something that I think many senior leaders experience, but maybe rarely articulate, and that is the shift from being respected inside an organization to becoming an influential beyond it. So I believe that this session is not going to be about self-promotion. I think it's going to be more about clarity, trust, and impact. And together we are going to explore how executives are using the tools that we have in front of us to turn experience into influence without losing credibility on the way. And just like Zana said, we will open for Q&A at the end of the session. And I do encourage you, I only know with me when I'm on these events that my questions, they just pop up as they go. So sometimes it's just better to just put it into the chat area, and we will try our very best to pick up as many questions as we can at the end of the session. So with that said, we are joined today by four remarkable leaders who have each taken a different path from the executive role to public influence. And I would love for our participants, if you could, I would like to invite you to just briefly introduce yourself, maybe about 1 minute each. And I would like to start with you, Sandy.
Well, thank you. I am fresh off of Davos with a 10-hour time delay, so I'm a little bit jet lagged. But I am a chief business officer for a unicorn startup. I'm also a board member of a company called Altair. We were on the NASDAQ. We were just purchased by Siemens for $11 billion. So I'm looking for my next board seat. And I am chair of the Applied AI group for the Digital Economist, which accompanies the World Economic Forum. So you may have seen some of our papers on AI as a teammate or robotics that were used at the WIF as well. And I'm so excited to be here. I'm also a proud member of Tech Women for Boards. Thank you for having me.
Beautiful. And Márcia.
Hi, thank you, Rúna, and thank you, Zana. I'm Márcia Balisciano, and I am head of corporate responsibility, sustainability at RELX. We are a business that is headquartered in London, but we work around the world. We are around 37,000 people in our group, and we focus on what we call our unique contributions to society through data and analytics. We apply that in our risk business by doing things like digital identity, fighting fraud, financial inclusion. In our science business, which is Elsevier, we look to advance science and health. At LexisNexis, Legal and Professional, we're cataloging laws to advance the rule of law. And we also have one of the world's largest events businesses called RX. Just about 2 weeks ago, my colleagues were in Abu Dhabi for World Future Energy Summit, which is one of our shows, but you might be more familiar with Comic-Con, which is another group of shows that we do. But it's a privilege to be here, and also to say that I'm interested to learn from the other speakers and also just share some things that I've learned through others along the way.
Well, thank you, Marcia. I want to go to then the only male on the panel today. So Donatian, or Don, as I can see you have on your name here.
Hello, hi. Hi, everyone. So it's a pleasure to be here, this evening with you. So my name is Donatien Chudamfolso, call me Donny or Don. So I've been over almost 20 years, I've been into AI, machine learning, AI engineer, machine learning, data scientist, call it right. I've been through all those roles. This is where my academic training, even my professional background is. So I've been into various sectors, industries, and companies, leading team into building AI from end to end, from an idea to productions. And then over the past few years, I was mostly focusing on financial services. Previously, I was leading the Apply AI team in one of the global tier one bank based in London. And then over a year now, I'm leading a subunit of one of the global consulting firm, right, where our main goal is to deliver AI for various enterprise at various stages of their AI adoption journey, taking, as I mentioned, bridging the gap between cutting edge research technologies and real value realizations, right? Execution for enterprise and for companies. So I'm looking forward to taking part in these discussions. It's going to be interesting, and then happy to be here.
Wow, thank you so much, Donny. And finally, Anne.
Hello, so my name is Anne Leslie. I am the head of cloud risk at IBM, so I'm originally Irish. I live in Paris. I came into the field of risk and cybersecurity about almost a decade ago, just a shift from my more traditional business background. But today, that kind of blend of domain expertise helps me work with executive teams and boards in deciphering the complexity that they have around them in terms of emerging technology risk and regulation, aligning that with their business and their risk appetite. So translating complexity into foresight and insight is where I operate.
Wow. We have some group over here, people. I'm telling you, I want to just go right into my questions that I have in front of me. I want to start with you, Sandy. Since you have your jet lag and everything, I'm just going to go right into that. So, Sandy, you've really made this shift that we're talking about at scale. In your opinion, what is the first mindset change an executive must make when you're stepping into that sort of an influence?
So I think one of them is moving from control to credibility. And what I mean by that is influence is no longer granted by title. It did used to be, and I would say in some cultures it may still be, but in most today it's earned. It's like earned media. It's earned through clarity, consistency, and trust. Trust we heard a lot about at Davos. I think it also not only moves from control to credibility, but from broadcasting to something I would call meaning making, which I think executives have to now help people interpret change, not just announce change. And one of the examples I used at Davos was I'm working with a company that spent 9 months developing like this mood jacket. And the mood jacket was for factory workers to help sense their temperature, their mood, their spirit, to really help them, work better in the factory. But they spent 9 months doing the tech, the IT, the AI that they needed, only a week announcing what was happening, but they didn't really explain why they were making this change, that it was for their good, that they were going to use it to adjust temperature, to play music, to give them extra breaks. And so I think we now have to move as leaders from broadcasting to meaning making. And that was really shown strongly in this factory, where the managers who took the time to explain it, to interpret it, to answer questions were the only teams that were super successful. And then the last change, or the last mindset shift I think you need, is from visibility to usefulness. In fact, I had a lot of people, especially a lot of young women, say, I've got to be on the stage at Davos. And when I would ask them, they said, visibility, I need the visibility. But I think your mindset shifts from, I'm on stage for my visibility, or I'm doing this for my visibility, to I want to be useful. Real influence today comes from helping others think better and act faster. So you really should be focused on, as you're presenting, what can I help all these people listening to do better and to do differently? So that's how I would frame the mindset, from control
That
to
is so
credibility.
good. That is
Okay.
so good. And I think there's a lot of change actually that has happened. We're seeing this change, I think, globally. It's not only in the US, or I know that I see this in my country and where I'm working. So I agree with you on that one. I wanna take the next question to Márcia. You come from a very different context. You have a long-term global institutional leadership. When did you personally decide it was time to use your experience as a public voice? And what helped you make that decision?
Well, I think it's important to give something back, and you are keeping your head down, you're doing the work that you need to do, which we always need to focus on. But there comes a time when you got a little bit more space, and you have been a consumer of content, you've been a consumer of the goodwill of others, and it's time to give something back. And that is really what was at play for me, I think, that just wanting to also pick your head up above your own organization and have a chance to understand and see from a different vantage point. So a really good example is the United Nations Global Compact, which RELX has been a signatory of since 2003. It started in 2000 with Kofi Annan, who thought that there was a need for businesses to sign up to some good principles for ethical business related to human rights, labor, environment, anti-corruption, eventually. And so I thought it was great, and helped to establish a UK network, and have been the past chair of the UN Global Compact in the UK. And when I could see that my term was nearly ending, I didn't want to be like the leader of a small banana republic because my term was only 3 years, and see if I could overstay my welcome. But I took I decided to write speculatively to the chair of something called the Foundation for the Global Compact, which is the initiative that helps underwrite this network of more than 20,000 companies globally. And I just hit it at the right time. It just so happened that they were looking for someone, and then I was able to join that board, where I've been over the last 3 years. So I think it's a two-way street. You're learning something, but you're also giving back, and that's something that I've really valued.
Yeah, sounds, both of you talking about this service, the coming of being of service, that mindset. It's really interesting. Thank you for that, Márcia. I want to take my next question to you, Anne. Now, many leaders hesitate to step into the spotlight because visibility can often feel risky. I mean, there's a saying, it's a cold on the top. From your perspective, what holds executives back from speaking externally?
So I think there are a couple of things. I think there's an element of culture in terms of psychological safety. What is permissible in any given organization. Depending on where you sit in the organization, might you be outshining somebody? Not all organizations welcome the visibility of everybody. But not all, we aren't, and I say we are not all equal in terms of access to platforms. So that, I think, is one, that element of corporate psychological safety. What does your environment permit? One of the things that is documented, particularly for women, is something called tall poppy syndrome, which is women who stand up amongst their peers, that could be other women or men, and get cut down for it. And it is a documented phenomenon in sort of sociology and in organizational behavioral psychology. And that lived experience, I think, of women having gone through that would be another reason why people hold back. At a more personal level, my own experience of this is that there is a shift, and I think both of the previous speakers alluded to it. There's a shift in our own personal growth and inner development, where at some stage we're not looking for visibility because we're operating from a posture of, I need it because I'm lacking. We start to share because the message we have feels valuable. We're no longer ashamed of our voice. We're no longer questioning ourselves about our value. And we can share what we think from a posture of strength. And if it lands well, great. And if it doesn't land with everybody, it doesn't matter. And that shift, I think, is vital, because there is a growth journey in terms of needing visibility, because it feeds something from that position of lacking, as opposed to, I've built up enough self-esteem and self-assurance and self-belief to say, here are my convictions. I always hold space for new information and to be able to change my mind if my thinking proves to be defective in some way. But that feeling of I am enough, I think, is one of the most fundamental things that we can have, irrespective of where we are. We might be an executive, we might not be, but it's something I wish for everybody. And it's something that I try to share with my mentees, is try to get to a position where you're confident in what you believe and you feel worthy in believing it, because you're always going to find an audience for that. Not everybody will agree with you, but you will always find somebody to listen when it's coming from a place of conviction and belief and generosity.
That is so profound. Thank you, Anne. So really about also what I'm hearing, if I can reflect, that self-awareness, I am enough. Where am I enough? To have just that self-awareness, because often we go into the cycle that we don't really realize that we are enough. That's such a good point. Such a good point. Thank you. Finally, Donnie, I'm going to call you Donnie. I find that quite a nice and comfy name. Now, you work in deeply technical environments. What changes internally when an expert decides to become more visible in that environment?
Yes, so I mean, thanks. I can only reiterate, right? So one important aspect is that when you decide to have that to go out, right, to become an influencer, one key element is that visibility. I like to say that visibility without substance, right, it will only fall apart, right? This cannot work. So visibility is like, I would say, let's say the 10% visible part, the tip of the iceberg. Underneath the roots, you need to be able to demonstrate, your experience, trade-off, delivery, execution, and so on and so forth. So we will say that with the take into account we are in the AI, the era of the AI, and so on and so forth, right? It's so easy to be tempted to talk about any topic, right? I mean, you can easily generate a message about blockchain today, tomorrow you talk about biotechnology, and so on and so forth, right? But if you are not able to kind of take some example, your own experience, articulate, go into the depth of the topic that you are talking, it will be easy to spot that, okay, this person is only like faking it out, right? So one key element that we put forward is like ensuring that we know what we are talking about. Is so critical, and not just like limit ourselves into telling the story, right? We need to be able to leverage what they take into our own experience when we talk about a topic, what have been not coming and say, okay, I want, for example, come on the public space and just talk about technologies, right? I should be able to say what are the trade-off when I want to select one technology against the other, and so on and so forth. So the key message here is that it's so important to have that substance under the hood, right? Whenever we want to step on the public space and start to be an influencer, talk about topic, this is so critical, right? And then I've seen myself several times when I go on social media. I see some, influencer posting about topic. Just by looking at the topic, you can easily spot that, okay, the person is not knowing, doesn't know what they are talking about, right? There is that trap that we need to be able to manage, right? Smartly, substantially know how to keep on one lane where you have an expertise. We are able to follow up on comments. People will reach out, people will follow up on your inbox, asking questions. You need to be able to kind of give an answer would demonstrate that you are an expert into this area. This is only when you will have the credibility that need to go with whenever you want to have that visibility. It has to come with some level of credibility. So yes, okay.
That is so interesting. Yeah, and basically what I'm hearing you say is this thing about fake it till you make it really is not exactly acceptable. We feel if it's authentic or not, if it's real or not.
Oh yes, that's the case. And then as I mentioned, unfortunately, there is the influence as well of AI. You will see that that's happening a lot. And then even when you are, you have been a renowned influencer, a kind of credible influencer that people trust, it's so important to resist to the temptation of talking about, topic that you don't master enough, right? It's so important to resist about to that temptations, right? Because as I mentioned, even myself, I have to do that exercise, right? Sometimes I find myself sometimes preparing, a topic because there is a new topic. This technology is evolving so fast every day. There is a new technology that you are passionate about and you want to speak about it, and then you have to step a moment, right? To say, wait a moment, and say, okay, I'm really sure that I mastered this technology that I want to talk about. Those kind of small exercise are quite relevant, right? Before openly talk about the subject publicly, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. That is really, really interesting from all of you. A lot of things, a lot of points that I need to think about. I want to go into a topic around trust, technology, and authority. A little bit, we've been slightly into that, but I want to go a little bit deeper into that. And I want to start with you, Anne. When executives become more visible, what signals credibility to boards and what raises red flags?
So that point that was just made by Doni around speaking about things where you have a certain level of mastery, and being very clear about the boundaries. Now, what I have found is that it's really important to stay at a level where you might have mastery of the technicalities, and it's important to have that level of understanding, but to be able to abstract it and to place it in the context of business and impact and risk, and to tie measures of trust in technology to artifacts, right? So what are we talking about in terms of risk horizons, and in terms of risk appetite, and in terms of auditable mechanisms for looking at trade-offs? So it's having that capability to have enough mastery of the topic itself and of the intricacies of technology, but then to zoom out and abstract it, to place it in the context of decision making. Because that's one of the things that I'm finding is proving very problematic for executive teams and boards right now, is being able to navigate things that feel in tension. So regulation across jurisdictions, risk appetites that might vary over time, sense that we have to engage with a certain technology, very present on AI at the moment, and how all of these things interconnect. There's no easy silver bullet to come up with the perfect answer.
Yeah.
There are only trade-offs. And how can you get to a point where you're comfortable with the decision that you've made and you're able to hold it up for scrutiny and to debate it and argue it,
Yeah.
to eventually land on a decision that says, yes, this is going to help us move forward. And that's that space that I navigate in, and sort of complexity, enabling organizations and people with their, our flaws and our psychology and our biases and our emotions, how all of that comes in when we're trying to navigate complexity and what we're willing to entertain. How many truths can we hold at any given time? So it starts with mastery of the topic, and enough mastery, and again, that self-awareness of where are the boundaries of your expertise, and then being able to abstract that complexity so that you're able to bring forward clarity and governance in organizations that are really finding themselves under assault by the level of complexity and pace of change that they're facing right now.
Wow. Thank you. And I think that is a lot to take in and try to articulate in your own situation. Thank you. That was very insightful. Going to Sandy next. Visibility at scale can easily become noise. What actually builds trust when leaders use platforms and AI to amplify their voice? What is your experience on that?
So I think trust is so important right now, in particular, because nobody knows like what's really true and what's not, right? There's so many deep fakes out there. I actually just had a deep fake removed about me. Thankfully, the platform removed it. So I do think that trust is such an interesting topic right now. But I do think that building trust also is about which platforms you are on. So I think, for example, LinkedIn is a non-negotiable. I think there's business narratives there, your reputation is there, your peer influence are all there. They're all kind of built in public as you do that.
Yeah.
I also think that earned platforms are better than owned platforms. And what I mean by that is, at Davos, it's really hard to buy your way onto a panel. I think that earns you credibility being on a panel at Davos, for example. Earned media for me is better than paid media. Podcast, trusted communities for me matter more than your own personal website. And then finally, I think there's a lot of vanity channels out there that don't scale influence. I have a friend of mine who's always posting on Facebook, which I don't think is where decision makers are anymore. And I think they dilute time and impact. So for me, kind of the bottom line is if your decision makers aren't there, your influence isn't there. And it's really hard to earn trust when you're not in front of your decision makers.
That is such a good, it's like you're shouting in an empty room, really. It's a waste of your energy. Yeah.
Completely true.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I recommend in a personal branding class that I teach is that in order for you to build trust, you have to know what your brand stands for.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing is, what do you want to stand for? And you can't stand for everything. So what in particular do you want it to stand for? And then everything you do, speaking on a panel, writing a blog, being on a podcast, should support those values, not somebody else's values, but those in particular values that make up what you want your brand to stand for. So, for example, if you want your brand to stand for quality, then you need to make sure that you're on podcast of quality. You need to reflect that in your work that you do on an everyday basis. Your manager needs to count on you. Like if you say you're going to deliver something, you can deliver it. So I think that consistency matters. And just the example I'll give you is that, take McDonald's, very, very successful company, has a brand value that's very different than, like a really fancy five-star restaurant.
Yeah.
But they each can earn trust. Why? Because they started with the values and then they supported those values and then they targeted those decision makers.
Oh,
Because if you had McDonald's going after five-star restaurants, they would fail, right? Because that's not their brand value. And that's the way we need to think about ourselves. If you want to have a particular reputation or trust, you need to purposely go after it. And I find that's where most people fail, is they don't purposely think about what they want to be trusted for.
That is just so true. And I think that as a leadership advisor and mentor, I think once we are aware of our personal values, which often for many people people get confused with maybe their religious values or the values in their family, but their personal values, that's what when they know that, and they can always go back to that when they're making up their minds about something. That is just rock solid. So true. Thank you so much. I want to go to Donnie again, from a technical leadership lens. How do leaders build influence based on substance rather than hype?
Yes, I mean this is a very good question, right? It's connected as well to what Sandy shared or Anne shared earlier, right? So I will say that obviously, I mean, in this time with AI, there is a lot of hype, right? A lot of noise out there, right? So, and then as I say earlier, it's so important to be able to distinguish, to filter out, and know what you need to talk about, right? What's high, what not. So one first rule that I'm going to share is that you don't necessarily need to be, the first to talk about something, to talk about the topic, because since, generative AI come out, I've seen a lot of so-called cutting edge, technology of approach of methodology that came out, and then they didn't last like for a month or 2 months, right? So I think instead of being, you don't even want to be like, you don't want to be the first mover. You don't want to be as well the last one to talk about, I mean, falling behind, right? So it's so important in this, there is a lot of hype noise. It's so important to be sure that any new item out there, right, has I would say, you have some reference to show that this thing actually work, right? One rule is that generally I will advise into the technical words to, instead of talking about stories, nice stories, it's always better to talk about experiences, right? If there is a new tools out of a new shining technologies, take one step back, go and try to experiment it. There is several ways of experimenting, see that it works, see where it's not working, and then before you can come and talk about it, right? Talking about experience, stuff that you have experimented generally always work, right? One thing I've noticed that every time that I'm sharing tips, sharing and ideas, whenever I'm talking about what I've experienced, right? So whether it is a positive outcome, what did work, whether it is what didn't work, what failed, sharing those stories always work. And just people remember that, right?
Yeah.
And as well as I mentioned earlier as well, this one thing that we need to distinguish is that when you are working, privately, you can iterate, right? You can iterate or you can till you reach to the right solutions. But on publics, domains, everything that you put out there will stay there, right? So you need to adopt a more rigorous approach in terms of selecting what you want to talk about, what you want to share about. So there is several way to go about what people will give different advice, but in my personal experience, taking on your experience, what you have experimented, and taking not only talking about stories, nice shining story, talking about what are the trade-off. Why did you select this architecture over that other architecture? These are approach that generally works, right? I mean, as
Yeah, it builds
I just
trust, I think, at the same time. Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
It makes you a trustworthy, your brand. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for that. And then going to Marcia, in your view, how does purpose strengthen authority rather than dilute it in public leadership?
Purpose is absolutely essential. If I kind of come around to that by summarizing what my colleagues have said, Anne said about in our earlier round about generosity of spirit. I think what that means to me is that if you're doing and you're publicly visible and it's for self-promotion, then people will see through that. I think what Donnie said about you better know your stuff. If you're going to be out on a public stage, you need to know it. And Sandy was saying, don't buy it, earn it. Sometimes I will receive things in my inbox and I can be featured on the cover of such and such if I will only pay X amount. And I always reply politely that, it has to be earned, not paid for. But where purpose comes in is you got to believe it. If you don't believe it, then you're not authentic, and again, that will shine through. So I think purpose is underwriting, and in an example, I love learning from others, and I've had the great privilege of serving on the board of something called the Ban Ki-moon Foundation. Ban Ki-moon is the only living former Secretary General. He was eighth Secretary General of the United Nations, and he could have gone back to Korea, where he hails from, and become maybe the president, although that's a dangerous thing in Korea sometimes. But he didn't. He has applied the same fields that have been important to him throughout his career in terms of women and youth, as the architect of the Paris Climate Agreement, or as the architect of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. He has kept that purpose, and therefore, his personal brand is one of moral authority. Now, not one that I think that many people can aspire to on that type of grand stage, but in our own way, each of us can. And if, Runa, I just come back for a moment to what you were saying before about, where do we get trust in technology? I think about two things. How do we have trust in science? And for us, that's about peer review. That is what other scientists think constitutes good science. And what do we think? And this is, maybe picking up on what Donnie was just saying, constitutes good technology. It's what our peers, our internal peers, our external peers think constitutes good technology. And we know it when we see it. And we need to be transparent about what our purpose is and what our values. And so RELX was a very early adopter of responsible AI principles that we developed by talking a lot internally with each other, looking externally at best practice. Those are in the public domain, that outline things like considering the real world impact of our solutions on people, avoiding bias, protecting privacy. And it's a little bit like painting the Golden Gate Bridge, because we're never done. We had a public objective last year to update those principles, and it's the same for this year, because we need to look at, where are the holes in fast-moving technology that we haven't accounted for. And if we have time, one of my Davos takeaways was I got to hear Dario Modi, the chief executive of Anthropic, speak, and I really warmed to a lot of his themes around the importance of trust in technology.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a good point. And summing up what you have been sharing here about trust coming from consistency, competence, and values, not from just speaking louder, but those things are such a big one. And it made me think about one of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou that when I'm helping people with building their brands, she said this beautiful sentence: people may forget what you said or what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So when we can show who we are, that we can stand in our own truth and share our light, I think what you're saying, that really comes into the consistency, the competence, and knowing and sharing our values. So thank you.
And Rúna, maybe just really quickly, since you mentioned Maya Angelou, I had the pleasure of hearing her speak when I was in university, and I never forgot three things that she said. She was talking about it in relation to writing, but it works for our personal brand as well.
Yeah.
Tell people what you're going to say it, and then tell people what you've said. And I think standing up for clarity and following through. And there's a lot to be said for that.
Oh, yeah. And that woman and her wisdom. Oh, love it. Absolutely. We are into round 3 with going into visibility with integrity. And I'm just looking at the time, and I hope that we can finish this up with hopefully a little time for our audience to bring in questions. Let's see how well we do. I want to start with you, Sandy. If an executive has limited time, Sandy, where should they invest first? Would it be LinkedIn, writing, speaking, networking, or perhaps something totally different?
So I kind of divided into 3 areas: insight, data, and storytelling. I think insight leads, because insight, that original perspective now is so rare and is such a valuable currency. Think about at Davos, how many times people repeated the same thing over and over and over again. Like, where did it originate from? That origination, I think, is super valuable. That uniqueness of the discussion, I think, is valuable. I think that leads. I think data supports it. So numbers earn credibility, right? And that's why a lot of times I'll do numbers in what I'm talking about. Like, Google says that men will apply for a job if they have 4 of 10 qualifications, women 10 of 10, because it just adds that level of credibility to the equation. But where my heart lies is storytelling. I always like to tell people that storytelling converts. So insight leads, data makes you credible, but storytelling converts. Stories turn your insight into belief, and that belief into action. And you just did a great quote. One of my other favorite quotes is this one. It says, "Tell me the facts and I'll believe, but tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever, forever." And that's why I like to write down stories from my life, from my daughters, because telling those stories are what people end up remembering about my presentations, about my talks, about my writings for Forbes. It's the storytelling that they remember. But storytelling without the data and without the insight is emptiness. So you really have to have all 3.
Yeah, and that takes practice. It doesn't come just out of space. It does take a lot of practice coming from someone who's really been trying to practice this. I think that, and knowing how to do that, I mean, this is something that you do, Sandy, right? Helping people crafting that. And I think another thing also what happens when we share authentic, true stories is that we can relate and we are building connections. And
yeah. I will tell you this, a lot of people say to me, how did you get Altair to be purchased by Siemens? Like, who knows what Altair is? I mean,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so part of the reason I was brought on the board was to help them tell their stories. Altair was used to simulate the Nike shoe. It was used to simulate using AI the Sydney Opera House. Now, they had all the facts and data, and they had very unique insights.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until we brought the stories in that people started to notice, and we started to just grow. And that got us the attention of Siemens, who ended up purchasing for $11 billion. So I do think that all three of these are needed. You can't forget one of them, but
Yeah.
definitely the storytelling is
Love
required.
that. Love that. Such an important one. Thank you, Sandy, for sharing that.
Mhm.
Donnie, what actually works and what fails for senior technical leaders on LinkedIn?
Okay, so yeah, so what works, what fails? So as I mentioned, is that what works, I will say, you need to talk about what you know about, right? You need to know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I think this is something which will always works because think about it, if you when you put a post out there, right, on LinkedIn, because you're talking about LinkedIn specifically, you need to be able to follow up on any like comments, like question if someone comment your inbox, you would like to find out more about the topic, right? You need to be able in the position where you can articulate like something that makes sense, right? And follow up on any topic that you put out there, right? So that means if you are just pretending or like faking it, we'll find out, right? That definitely won't work. Okay. And then another element is that, as I mentioned, mostly on LinkedIn, and then we already cover it, right? We are in the era of AI. It's like that temptations of be knowing everything, right? Be able to talk about everything. This definitely won't work, right? This definitely won't work. It's so important to resist to that temptations and only be sure stay into the lane, right? On the topic that you master. Talk about what you are mastering about, right? This is so important. And then another element that I will say, which is we already covered that because it's nearly universal. Right? The storytelling that Sandy was mentioning, I would say this is like a universal, I will say not a theory, but it's kind of universal. Storytellings always win. All right. Telling the story about your experiences, what works, what fails, making the story, this is what people will remember. All right. Not only like giving like information that everyone can have everywhere, that everyone can have on the news. Taking something particular storytelling, I would say something that works as well, right? There is other. This is what I can think about. Come on top of my mind. There is definitely more that we can say about what works and what fails, right?
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you for that. It's a good point. Really good point. I'm going to Marcia. How does books and long form writing change an executive's influence over time? What is your point on that?
Well, hopefully it helps. I'm in the process of writing a book with two wonderful colleagues called Navigating the Business of Sustainability. But I think that we leaders and all of us have the tendency to keep our head down. There's that point again, where we are rushing from meeting to meeting. We are stuck in front of our laptops or our phones, but we need inspiration. And if there's one theme that's come out, it's this evening. It's about storytelling, and by hearing other stories, you find something that can inspire you, that you can learn from. And so there are two that I wanted to highlight. One is from a former mentor who passed away last year, a gentleman named Sir Bob Reed. No condition is permanent. He was an 8-year-old and lost his arm because he was working in his father's butcher shop in a little bit too much in a hurry. And he became the chair of Shell UK. And he was an extraordinary individual. And so he tells in this book about, his beginnings, having that disability and, you know, the amazing life that he had. The book that I'm reading right now is also by someone that I've had the pleasure to meet, Hank Rogers, who's the founder of Tetris. It's called The Perfect Game. Absolutely fascinating. Hank is a force to be reckoned with, but he has a very strong moral compass and has spent so much of his time focused most recently not only in building good games, but also making a difference in terms of the environment. And so I think long form writing is a chance to hear the stories of others and see how you can apply that in your journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really a good one. Thank you for that one, Marcia. And finally, Anne, I have one question for you. In your view, where is the line between thought leadership and overexposure?
I think overexposure is going to be measured by people's reaction. It's difficult for people to gauge themselves about where they're necessarily overexposed. Where the ratio between signal to noise starts getting distorted if you're publishing content for the sake of, if somebody has a ritual saying, oh, I have to be, visible on LinkedIn every single day. I haven't actually got anything to say today, but I'm going to publish anyway. Just my opinion, but for me, that's veering into overexposure because it's not adding anything except content for the sake of it. Is it hard to be original every single day? Yes. Is it necessary to always be original? Maybe not. If it's finding that balance between I feel strongly about something or I have a new idea and taking the time to craft something that might be amplified by AI, it might be augmented, but the core thinking has, again, my opinion, the core thinking and the cognitive processing has to be done by the person. Because we don't grow otherwise. We get lazy. And I've noticed this. It's a very, very fine line to navigate using the tool to go fast and using the tool to get better. I can go fast without getting better. And I've got sort of personal discipline around that now going, no, if I'm relying on it because I just want to accelerate, I make myself slow down. Because what I'm trying to do is improve my thinking, expose my blind spots. So the overexposure is in terms of where you're propelling a narrative that is out of sync with the proof points that you have. Right? You built up a reputation that comes over time with judgment, with proof points, data, things you've done, things you can point to, speeches that you've done, presentations, panel contributions, where you can substantiate your opinion saying, I built it up over time with this. The overexposure is when that begins to fall apart because it's hollow. It's you're projecting something that isn't backed up by anything. And it's okay to stretch a little bit, but it can't become so stretched that it becomes thin and hollow. People feel it. You've talked about Maya Angelou, right? There's so much truth in that quote. People feel it. They may not necessarily be able to articulate why, but they'll stop believing you. And when people stop believing you or wanting to listen to you, you know that you've gone into that dangerous territory of overexposure.
That's so true. And when you're saying that, I'm thinking, if we fall into that trap and we become hollow,
far, it's a long way back.
But that then becomes your personal brand. You're a hollow brand. That was what you are known for. That's the feeling that people get, and it's really, really good. There's this fine line between, really getting it out there and gonna be what we say sometimes. And I think for many, many women, at least in my environment, were raised, and here in Iceland, where we have all that gender equality, we're raised by, you are only a good one if you do things, be a doer, not human doer, not to be a human being. And I think that is something that many of us are kind of like looking at the moment, thinking, oh, maybe if I allow myself to be more human being and more me and more my values and sharing more who I am, that might actually lead to more results than just being the doer all the time and with a hollow expression. So that's so good. Yeah. So I can see we are on time. Oh my God, Zana. We have 1 minute, and unless, is there any question in the chat, or can I just?
Yeah, I think we can open the floor for question or two. I would like to say thank you so much. As always, we have lots to talk, especially when we have such a great panel. I mean, I believe that the audience is really drawn to your questions and answers. And the whole conversation really about the personal branding, if I may add, is also as important as a community sharing, because we can't be on our own. And I'm really grateful for your time and effort to support our community. So thank you so much. So quickly, if there are any questions, could you just please raise your hand? And I'm sure we can stay a minute or two longer if needed.
Yeah.
My question was about the publishing book and what is the experience we had before Christmas, quite a nice topic where we were helping community to promote their books under the topic for humans by humans. So there are a couple of book writers here, anyone from the audience, or maybe Sandy, if you don't mind, can you let us know about your book, and then Kamalis?
Yes, for sure. So I wrote a book called AI First, Human Always. It was my 7th book. So I wrote my books to share my ideas so others wouldn't have to go through the same thing I did. The books don't earn you money, so don't think you're going to get rich off the book unless you write a fiction book, unless you're like Danielle Steele and you can do like a book a quarter, which is what she's doing right now. But the book really helps with credibility. It helps you to share your own personal point of view. And a lot of my speaking engagements, which I do make money off of, come from the book. So the book gives you credibility, especially if you have a publisher do it. If it's self-published, I think it's harder, but you can do it. But for me, like I had Wiley, I had Pearson, I had Scholastic. So the publisher also makes a difference. But what I forgot on my first book is, the book is a heavy lift. If you do it right, it's a heavy lift. And I thought, oh, great, the book's done, my pen's down. Now everybody just comes to buy the book, and that doesn't happen. You have to do the marketing. I would say the marketing after the book, the work after the book is actually harder than writing the book. That would be my perspective. I don't know if any other authors would agree with that, but
I can vouch for that as well. Yeah, with
Yeah.
my books. Yeah, for sure.
I did write 2 books with IBM. So I also, like Anne, I used to work for IBM. That was a fabulous experience if you can get a company to support you, because then IBM purchased my book for any speaking engagements. It really opened a lot of doors. I don't know if IBM still does that, but they actually were the ones who asked me to write my very first book. But that doesn't happen with every company every time, but that was a really awesome experience.
That's a true one. We see that Anna has raised her hand. Anna, do you have a question?
I've not written many books, but I can tell that one of the tips that I was sharing in the past that is useful for books is to use them as visiting cards. So it's your book, it's part of what you are when you meet new people, or just send them to the people that you think it could actually be interested to them. If you've written a specific topic that they might be aligned on what they're doing. So use it as almost like a promotional tool for yourself, in addition to actually having it out there.
Yeah.
I would
Great.
also say to really pick your title very carefully. Your title matters. My book title, AI First, Human Always, has now gone on to be a bestseller in 7 different countries. And my publisher, who is a great publisher, it's Wiley, they're the #1 book publisher in the market, fought me hand and fist about using that title. They did not want to use that title. And one of my friends is Guy Kawasaki, and I shared the title with him. And he was the one, he actually went to bat with me in one of the meetings to help me to get the title, because the title makes such a difference. You don't think about it. You write, 300 pages and you think all the content, but it's all about the title.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you so much. And if you don't mind, I would like to give a quick word to Jennifer, just to let us know what an amazing project she has been working. And I would like to finish the call with her story. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, Rúna, I remember you from Iceland. Oh my goodness. And I'm sitting here thinking, wow, what an amazing event. I am so inspired by everything you all have said. And to be honest, Zana, I am so grateful to be joining the Tech Women for Boards. And my heart is just racing, and I feel like I absolutely belong here, and now is the moment.
Just
Okay.
tell us your story very quickly. Thank you.
Okay, well, 3 years ago when the war in Ukraine began, I'm an English teacher and a school founder outside of Barcelona. And I started offering free classes for a few Ukrainian students. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Take your time.
And children. Oh, after listening to you all, I just feel like I'm so moved.
Let me help you. So Jennifer is based in Barcelona. She's an amazing director teacher, a leading organization called Teachers for Peace. She's got approximately 600 volunteers across the globe, teaching thousands and thousands of children online. And we had a long conversation today, and we will be helping her with her branding, connections, etc., to have this happening further globally. And we would like to help her with the growth across really the world, because just name the countries where your students are coming from, Jennifer.
From Afghanistan. Well, basically, first off, we're based in Ukraine. And through Ukraine, we began, and what we started is an amazing network of volunteer educators from all around the globe who desperately want to help. And all of I'm going to say the numbers because impact and now data. So there are hundreds and thousands of children and women who are displaced, and now, unfortunately, in the United States as well. And so we have children in and all over Europe and Ukraine. We have children in Afghanistan. I have 3 teachers in Afghanistan, and we have about 27 girls in an underground school. We're connected with the Geneva Foundation, the Geneva Learning Foundation. So all of the teachers are trauma informed. It's all done by love. Up until now, it's all been done out of pocket, and with the support of little gifts here and there. And now I'm looking for support to be able to continue to grow, because at this moment, what I do is I have my online school. I have my school where I earn money. But then I also have Teachers for Peace, where we dedicate all of the hours as a passion, as a hobby, not only me, but the millions, not millions, but the 70 people in my team.
Thank you, Jennifer. Amazing, amazing. Thank you. Thank you all.
I'm so sorry.
It's
Thank you
okay, no
so much
worries.
and for everything. And your words were moving. I'm
Yeah.
taking so much away from this, and I recommend. I'm just so grateful. So thank you
We
very
are
much.
grateful to you and to everyone who could attend today. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
Wish you a good
you.
evening.
Wish you a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Bye bye. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye bye.
Goodbye.